I'm here with Tammy Honaman, and today we're going to make metal clay rings. And these are awesome, Tam.
Thank you so much. I love making rings, and I love sharing how to make rings because people seem to feel that they can't do it.
Well, it's kind of intimidating because there are some special things you need to know.
Yes.
These are cool, but these are all the different types of rings that you love to make.
Yeah.
But today we're going to be making these ones with the sparkles.
Yes.
Fun.
You gotta add some bling.
Right.
So, but before you begin, you really need to know your size because with metal clay, with the shrinkage, you need to understand where you're starting and plan for where you know your ring is going to wind up.
Oh, okay.
So if you're a size 10, then you would make a ring that's at least 11 and a half or 12. And then depending on the type of ring, you hedge your bets.
Yeah,
and you go a little bigger
best.
and you hope for the best. Yeah, that part's a little tricky, but we'll get to that at the end and talk about a little bit of ways to prevent some of that uncertainty. But that's the goal, is like up 1.5 to 2 times above your regular ring size.
Okay.
Okay. So, and what I've done here is I've prepared a ring mandrel that is 12 and a half. So we're going to start with the 12 and a half size. And I just have some nonstick sheet on this mandrel.
Okay.
And that's our target goal.
All right.
Okay. What I'll do is first roll out a rope of clay. So to get a nice long, thin rope, rather than taking a whole lot of clay and making it and then cutting it, I like to start out by rolling. I'll use a rolling rectangle. I don't think that's its
That sounds
technical
really official.
So I'll just roll out a log of clay, and this just helps give me some of the dimension that I need for the band.
Well, I think this is genius because you're not getting fingerprints all over it,
Yep.
and you're not making it lumpy.
Yep. And then once I get it to a good thickness, what I'll do is now I'll flatten it to the thickness that I want for my ring band. The other thing to know about rings is that they need to be a little thicker. So where in most metal clay I'll go down to like a 2 or a 3 card thickness, I won't go below a 5.
Okay, so these slats that you have are 5 card thickness.
Yes. If you were to check me, they might even be more than that.
Or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you see I got somewhat of a uniform consistency from starting out with that log of clay.
Okay.
So then I'll just trim off some of this excess. So this is a tissue blade. It's a very sharp blade that we've made use of in the craft industry. And I would normally wrap this up, but for now I'm going to leave it because I might need it. And what I'm going to do is just gauge this spot. And then I want to line it up pretty well so that it's overlapping where it's supposed to. And then there's a couple of ways you can make rings. This is going to be like a lap joint. So it will cut kind of like on the bias. And so that it's undercut on the top and then it's overcut on the bottom so that the two ends will then overlap. Just a little.
Because you had the pieces overlapping, that's possible.
Correct.
And that's better than just a flush joint?
Yes.
Because it has more surface contact, I guess.
Yes, exactly. You got it. So then I'll use a little bit of water. When you're working wet clay to wet clay, water is your friend. The clay does not want to be wet. It does not want to take in this water, so you do have to be patient. But I'm just going to flood this joint with water.
Now, why do you use water instead of slip or something?
Well, when it's wet, you could use slip, but normally when it's wet, you don't need to.
Okay.
But you could. And it may be like if this seam doesn't come together, you're going to have to fill it in. So the slip might not be a bad idea, but I don't do that.
Okay.
Maybe you're onto something. Then I'll just use a tool to really help marry those two sides together and just do a nice job kind of bringing clay over without disturbing too much of the surface.
So you're really trying to erase that seam as much as you can?
Yes. And again, because the clay shrinks, the seam is going to be its weakest spot, and so it will want to give. And the thicker that I make the bands, the less that happens. And also, as it's drying, one of the things, because it's drying on here, this form is going to keep it from drying too small. Exactly. But at the same time, that's also going to be what's going to cause it to pop off or pop apart. So it's without it getting too dry, I will remove it from this mandrel.
Oh, okay.
So that'll help. And so I'll just kind of work on that until it's nice and neat. I would continue to go, but I think you get the point. Yeah. Okay. So then the ring has two parts, and while one part is drying, you can start working on the other one. And as I mentioned, I would need this guy. So what I'm going to do is texture some clay and then cut out a shape. It does not have to be my shape, but that was what I did. And then so to texture clay, you want to condition your surface so that the clay does not stick. And so I'll just kind of lightly spray where I'm going. And this will just help the clay from sticking and getting into the recesses of the texture, because that would then be a drag.
And wasteful.
And wasteful, and not fun.
And you're using for your conditioner just a special spray that's meant for use with this type of metal clay, right?
That is correct. It is a release. So I'm just going to make sure I have enough clay, and because I'm merging a couple pieces together, I just want to try to get the smoothest surface I can. And so here, what I'll do is I'll work a little thicker than my ultimate goal, so it's good to know what your final goal is going to be, which I'll probably go down to, this is 5. Blue is 5, I believe. There's a cheat sheet that comes with these.
Oh, nice.
I still use it. I don't waste the brain power on that. So I'm going to move the textures just aside for a bit. So what I want to do is go up a size for the original rolling out, so that when I texture, I have some that goes thinner, so that then I get the texture.
Okay. Room.
Some room. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to just roll this, so I get to that initial thickness, and then I'll move in the textures.
I know you're working with silver. That's probably your favorite, right? But can you do the same technique with other types, or is it primarily texturing is really for silver clay?
No, I think you can do it with any type. Each of them has their own little nuance in how they need to be fired and how they need to be married together as you're joining pieces together. So it's just important to know what those differences are. But no, they're all very good for texture. The thing that's really good about metal clay and texture is that because it shrinks, it enhances the texture that you've put into it.
That makes sense.
And because it's such a dense material, it takes it so beautifully. It's got to be probably what drew me into metal clay right from the beginning. All right, so then we'll do the big reveal. So you see how it released from that one.
I like how you do both sides.
I think in jewelry, people always want to see the back, and if you forget, then you're sad. It isn't that it's not okay. It is certainly okay, but I like to try to remember to do the back. So I'll just freeform the shape. You can certainly use a template. You could create a template on paper and scissors. And then from here, what we'll do is shape it. So I'm going to get like a little bit of a curve to it. And you can use the surface of a light bulb. You can use
something like this.
Something like this. And I'll go with the bigger one so I get like a less steep curve. There we go. And then I'll just let it dry on there. All right, I've got nice. This is what happens at home.
That's right.
Everything just winds up in a pile. And then at the end of the night, you sort it all back out again.
Oh, you're really good if you do it at the end of the night.
Well, which night I didn't say. So this is one of the bands, and what I'll do now is just clean it up. And when you're refining, you want it to be level. And so I'll do the figure 8 motion, and then I'll turn the ring, and I'll do the figure 8 motion. And that's just making sure that the dimension is staying level. And I'll turn it over, and I'll do the same thing.
So this is dry before you fire it, right?
Yeah, this is completely dry. And so then I'll continue to work on the surface. And I have I've cut some pieces that are, this is also very good for that. But when you're doing a flat surface onto cleaning up a round surface, you want to just make sure you're kind of going with the curve. You don't want to go this, then you'll
just like with your nails.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that will work. And then I just cut up some of these abrasives, and so they're nice and easy to get in.
That's a good idea.
And they're flexible. Yeah, just some strips. And then I came across these not too long ago. These are awesome. And you can put them right onto your ring mandrel, but they also, because they're round,
right.
You could make your own, but these were already made and they work great. And they're also in a progressive grit, so you can refine.
You remember how to go.
Exactly.
And so, you do all this before you fire it.
Oh, totally.
I just want to say that one more time because it's kind of unbelievable because metal is the opposite. You do everything and then you take care of it at the end.
Yeah, and the more you clean as you go, the less work there is ever to do at the end, which is the beauty of working with metal clay. And I think what makes it nice to compare when you're thinking about it in metal fabrication. All right, so then here I have a band that's nice and refined and clean. And then I would do the same exact thing for cleaning up my rectangle. So you can see it has the curve and it's got the texture on both sides. Now we need to marry the two together. So I always like to say, and I'm sure my children when they were little wouldn't appreciate it, but metal clay is like a 3-year-old. It never wants to do what you want it to do. So you have to kind of coax it and convince it that it needs some better manners. And it needs to listen. So what I'll do is I'll kind of wake the clay up by adding a little bit of water in the two places that I will be adding more clay, so that when I'm ready to marry the two together, the clay will be a little bit more receptive.
Interesting.
It's a theory.
I think it's working for you.
So I'll just pinch off a little bit of clay. And I will tend to use a lot here because I've got somewhat of a curved surface in one direction and I've got another curved surface here. So I do want to make sure that I'm getting enough clay between the two that they stay together.
So this is your glue?
This is my glue. And if I hadn't wet it, this would be like kind of just falling right off. And because it's an air dry clay, it does kind of absorb that water very quickly. And I'm putting some significant pressure, but if you notice, I'm pushing up with my thumb from the inside of the ring and carefully pressing down from the center of this one so that I don't snap it. It's very fragile at this stage, so you do want to be careful. And what I'll do is really try to get these two layers together. But again, it takes a little bit of time because it doesn't want anything to do with what you're trying to get it to do.
It needs a lot of finesse right there.
Yep. And I'll even overlap the clay into the band. And I'll add more water and, just kind of
keep working it until it is permanent like this.
Yep, so I'll just set that aside for now. So then when it's dry, it will look like this. And you can see some of the differences, where it had been smooth. Now it's a little bit rough from the new clay that I added.
Right, so do you have to take precautions before you fire that? Will you go through all these processes again with that part? Okay.
Right, but the nice part is now I only have to do it where I just added clay because we've already taken care of the rest of the ring. Now I just need to go back over where
Fix that up.
Yeah, it's just that one spot.
Okay.
All right. And so the other thing that when I rolled out the log earlier, you can roll it out really thin and you can create coils by wrapping that around a straw.
And what would you use that for?
So what I'm gonna do, so you would just roll that log really thin and then wrap it around a straw and let that dry. Then when you remove it, you have a coil. And what I'll do is I will cut the coil carefully. Again, this blade is very sharp. And then, so they'd be like jump rings.
Okay.
But what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make a loop out of it that I'm gonna then use to hang the crystals from.
Oh, nice.
So then I'll just cut off the bottom feet. And then I've got a nice little half loop. And so what I will do on this guy, which is now ready to go, so you see that one's all nice and clean, I will add a new, some water, again, just to that spot where I'm going with the loop. And this time I'll add the paste, so you can see that. And what I'll do with the paste, See, these tools start out organized. They don't necessarily stay organized.
That's okay. You're being creative.
So I'll come in and I will add paste to the feet. Oh. This paste is very thick, so it might not be as cooperative.
If it's thick, can you water it down?
Yes, just add some water, absolutely. That's the nice part about it. And then you can just keep adding filings to it.
And just keep collecting it.
Yep, and then just add water. So then I would let that sit. Again, just make sure it's neat and let that dry.
Okay.
And then refine it.
So all the polishing steps.
Yep, but just that one spot. Because we've already done everything else. So it's like as we're progressing, it's just that one spot.
And then you're going to fire this?
Then it's ready to fire.
All right.
Yes.
And when it comes out of the kiln, it looks like this.
Yes. Now, one of the things I mentioned that I wanted to offer as a way to help keep it from shrinking too much is there's some devices on the market that you can put inside the ring shank before you fire it that will prevent it from shrinking too much.
Okay.
So, just a little side note.
Nice.
Then, when we're ready, we can burnish and just use the brass brush.
And then you can see how it gets that shine.
Yep.
And now you're going to add jump rings and crystals and finish it any way you want to.
Yep.
These are beautiful. Thank you so much, Tammy.
Thank you.